Hi, best friends.
I'm Tabby.
And I'm Caitlin. And today we are discussing A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J Maas.
Yes, this will be the final installment of the ACOTAR series for now. Supposedly there will be 8 books total for this particular series. So buckle in as we say goodbye to our favorite Faye.
It's so bittersweet, but we are super excited to move on to some different book series on the podcast. So
yes.
For those of you who don't know, this book is extremely long. It's a very lengthy boy. So we, because we just have so much stuff we want to talk about, decided to not do a synopsis episode this week. However, if you do not have the time to read the full book, there is actually online, we found a synopsis written by Sarah Pereira. And that is on her blog entitled creamycodfish.com. So Sarah, we are interested, if you're comfortable sharing with us what creamy codfish means, we're very intrigued.
Perhaps
Shoot us an
family
email
name.
or DM us on Instagram, the Sisters Warden.
Dying to know what it means.
Dying to know. So yeah, we're just going to kind of jump in then and start with what are our overall thoughts on this book?
Well, let me tell you, I don't hate this book. I don't hate it. I don't hate this book. I can never hate anything Sarah J does. Out of every book I have ever read by Sarah J Maas, ever, this is probably the bottom for me. I don't like Nesta. I have said I don't like Nesta throughout this entire series. I do love her character growth in this story, and you can definitely see she's starting something really cool, especially with the Valkyrie. I don't like her though. Love Cassian. He's amazing. He's a big teddy bear, super good character. He has a lot of flaws, but he's willing to accept it. But I honestly probably if I had to do it out of 5, it'd be a 2.8 to a 3 out of 5.
Oh yeah, so kind of average for you, or
yeah, it wasn't bad. It just it kind of felt basically she cut and paste Feyre's initial story and then just kind of changed the wording a little bit.
No, that's completely fair. And it's funny because the first time I ever read this, I actually was so much more into it than I was the second time reading it through. So for this one, rereading this entire series, it seems like for me, all of them had a great rereadability for me, except for A Court of Frost and Starlight and A Court of Silver Flames. Those were tougher for me to get through.
A Court of Frost and Starlight, it's just it was only meant to be read once. It was just a cute little novella. It's kind of setting up this. It's basically an extension of this book.
Yeah, it is. It's just kind of shifting gears from Feyre being the main character to now we're switching to Nesta. And I agree with you. It's really hard to like Nesta because she is such a jerk. But I do really enjoy her character arc. I think she grows so much. But she is not my favorite character in Silver Flame. There's just so many characters that are more lovable than her. So it's really hard to be I love Nesta. I love reading about her.
Unfortunately for me, I just kind of feel Sarah J Maas almost kind of fell prey to those few outspoken fans who are we need more smut, and don't get me wrong, I love smut, love it, but I feel there could have been a lot more story, and I don't usually ask for this, but with this being such a I don't know, such a huge story with so much world building, there's so many aspects going on, there's so many different interwoven parts to this book, for her to just kind of focus solely on Cassian and Nesta getting together, that was really disappointing for me. And I love their relationship, the banter back and forth, but I don't know, it just kind of fell flat for me because we really didn't get into anything until 3/4 of the way in.
Yeah, I 100% agree, because it's funny, as much as you learn through the first 3 books of this series, they still have a lot to throw in for like silver flames. They're like, oh yeah, there's also these other like, you know, ancient items that are cauldron made, and like those are really important, and like we haven't talked about them yet for some reason, but now we're going to. Like,
yeah. Oh, by the way, this could have, you know, helped save the like everybody during the war, and we just chose not to go after those. And it's
yeah,
like,
I don't know
cool.
the implications of that. Like, is this something that they just learned about like through
Amber knew about them.
Yeah. Okay. So why?
So I don't know. I don't understand. And like, while Nesta was doing the fucking Stairmaster 10,000, we could have been adding in some additional like points about like what the fuck the dread trove is, and like a little bit more about Amren's background, maybe, because like I know they're not on good terms in this book, but like we still don't know anything about Amren.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you're saying, like Nesta just freaking doing the stairs over and over. That's like another reason that we're not doing a synopsis for this book, because if I had to write about her doing the stairs, yeah, it's too much. It's too much stairs. It's a little bit too much smut. It's just like, it's the fact that the smut is like taking precedence over the story.
It's not even that it's too much smut. It's just that they did not spread it out tastefully. Like it was just true. Like every single chapter was them just banging constantly. And then it's like, oh, by the way, she also killed this queen and Koshay's on the loose. The end.
Yeah, it's like beginning, you know, they're fighting. There's a lot of tension, but they're not like banging yet. And then it's like, they're banging and they're doing it every moment,
everywhere,
every waking moment.
Poor Azriel.
And then Azriel is like,
he's either like having the time of his fucking life, or he is scarred.
Yeah, he is scarred literally and figuratively. Yeah, didn't love that. I do agree, but I did forget to rate it. If I were to rate it out of 5, I think maybe I'd rate it like slightly higher. I'm thinking like a 3.5. That's just like slightly better than average for me. But like I said, it was really hard for me to reread it. And for me to like rate something like 4 or more, it's like, oh yeah, I would reread that.
No, it's
quite there for me.
Just because like I read her other series, and like even with like Throne of Glass with Crescent City, like she still had like, I wouldn't call it smut, it's not really smut, but I mean she still had, you know, more of that new adult vibe in some of the books, but it did not take away from the plot line. And that's, I don't know, I just feel like it did in this book.
Yeah,
it didn't work for me.
Yeah, like I get it, they're into each other and I love that for them, but it was a lot. And also like they didn't have like a healthy dynamic.
No.
So it was just like, oh goddamn.
That pissed me off too, the whole miscommunication trope. And like I've said it before, it is one of my least favorite tropes in any book. I hate it when something could just so easily be fixed. And like literally the beginning of the book, the first time they slept together, I get it. Like you're trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. But by the time we get to him banging her at the Court of Nightmares, like I'm pretty sure she understands, like, I love this man, and she knows it, and he knows it, and like she refuses, and like it carries out the rest of the book till literally the last 50 pages when she is dying on top of a mountain. She's like, oh yeah, like this man is my mate and I reject it. It's like, what the fuck? Like we had 800 pages to figure this out.
Yeah, it's pretty BS because like they already had that moment too, like in the third book when Cassian was literally dying. Yeah, so like why are we pretending that didn't happen? Like that's really dumb.
Jesus, it pissed me off.
Before we like go down a rabbit hole of the things that we didn't like, first we're going to talk about things that we did like. So, number 1 for us, the Valkyrie. We love a girl power squad. They are badasses. They grow so much.
Favorite Girly-Pops.
Yeah, 3 Girly-Pops and the power of friendship. They really take on the world together and it's beautiful. I love it so much.
Yes, Gwen in particular. Gwen she just holds such a dear place in my heart. I don't know. I think it's just because like we met her earlier on whenever, Asriel saves her and stuff. And like, you don't realize it's Gwen or anything, but I don't know, just the growth that she has, and Emery too. Emery's awesome, but just, I don't know. It took a lot for Gwen to take those steps outside of the library and all the way up to finding Ramiel and
and I like how she shows her strength a lot, because she's still like a very positive and upbeat person, even though she's like going through all of that. And she's not like, she doesn't shut down, like, become reserved or angry or sad. Like she's didn't lose her like herself. So
another thing that I really liked about the book was just Cassian in general. Like I said, Nesta was not my favorite character, but I loved Cassian's character growth the most, because he is just seen as like kind of the happy-go-lucky friend who will do anything, he'll drop anything to be there for his family, but he lacks confidence in himself. He's confident in his skills in fighting, but he is not confident in his other abilities. And I really liked that Reese, was kind of pushing him outside of his comfort zone. He's like, I want you to take on this role as somebody who's doing some of my bidding, who's working with Eris, who is that go in between like Lucian and Vassa and Jurian, and then this realm as well. So almost like an emissary type role, or a diplomat. And so it was really just cool seeing how Cassian was able to kind of step into that role, and how even Nesta, kind of built him up and made him feel like he could do other things besides just find me kind of like a meathead.
Yeah, because while that's like his very obvious like strength on its face, like he is so much more than that. And he's a very like loving and caring, like compassionate guy. And
really
we even saw that
his like bastard status.
Yeah, he does. He kind of uses it as a defense. But like in Frost and Starlight, whenever he buys all of like the winter clothes to go out to the people who like don't have, warm clothing to wear, like he's just a real teddy bear. The other thing we loved is Asriel as the chaperone.
Yes.
He does a shit job at being
so bad at it.
He's like, stop banging, but then like doesn't actually do anything.
Dude, I feel like Asriel's a real freak, and he's probably just like, hell yeah.
I hate the thought of that, but you're probably right.
I think I'm right though.
You're probably right. And
a little voyeurism.
Like we love Asriel. He's my favorite of the Illyrians. Asriel is the hottest Illyrian. Changed my mind.
Waiting for a threesome, Sarah J. That's the only acceptable thing you could have done in this book, and you didn't.
Yeah, I do wish that like now would have been the time. You can't do
everything else in.
You can't do it later on. Yeah. Yeah. And then also we like Eris.
Eris is my little baby. I'm obsessed with Eris. I really feel like he's just gonna pop off one of these days. Like he kind of did in this book, honestly. Even though at the end, like he almost got us. Like we thought he was a bad guy, but just kidding. No, he's not. He's back in my good graces.
He's
Eris,
always doing that.
Yeah, and that's why I think there's more to him than what's being let on here. I think he's going to be, like I said, a huge player in the next few books, and like especially with like the whole rebuilding of Prithian and like the courts. I think he is going to either be very, very beneficial, or he's going to hinder them. It's going to be one or the other. But I loved him, and I really kind of liked his dynamic with Nesta as well. Shoot your shot, playa. Like I think they would have made a beautiful couple. Personally, I know she was meant for Cassian. That's fine, but
the thing is, like,
put himself out there, and I was proud of him.
I kind of feel like I would want someone different for Eris, and I don't know who, but like, yeah, I do think they would have been like a power couple, but I don't know.
I like she would have bullied him though.
Yeah, but he would have bullied her back.
Yeah, but like I don't know, I just really want the best for him, and I think that's why I liked him so much in this book, is because especially like when he was rejected by Ned, like he was ready, my man was ready to risk it all. He was like, I would love her hand in marriage immediately. And like that may just be because she's very powerful and he recognizes that, but I also think he just had like a good connection with her and he's just lonely.
Yeah, and also like it is I think it's canon that like Nesta's a baddie, like she's a good looking lady and
she's a hottie.
Yeah, so I do think that also he was like had a little bit of a crush on top of it all.
I just want the best for him.
Yeah, I do too. He really has had like quite the redemption arc over the past couple novels, and I do hope that we see like him, you know, like come into his own in the future novels.
I hope so. Ooh, maybe him and Elaine will end up together. Maybe
well,
she'll leave Lucian for her brother, his brother.
Well, do I want that to happen? No.
No, I still think she'll end up with Tamlin. That's neither here nor there, but
I honestly that would be perfect, but also I would feel really bad for Lucian.
No, they fucking deserve each other. They're trash garbage. Lucian is in a throuple with Dorian and Bassett. Like I'm absolutely sure of it.
Absolutely, he has to like numb the pain somehow.
Yeah, they're together.
Yeah, Lucian deserves better.
Some things that we didn't like.
The ending is like so rushed. And we were talking about this too, like how the setup of the book is like beginning, Cassian and Nesta want each other but won't admit it. Like after that, they just bang a whole bunch, and then like the ending is like, and here's all this stuff that's like really important to the plot. Blah, blah, blah,
also,
blah,
by
blah.
the way, like she killed a bunch of people and Crochet's on the loose, and he's looking for Vasa. And also, we have like all the dread trove items, and there could be an eighth court who's to say we killed a whole demigod, but that's neither here nor there. And like, then it was the end.
Yep. Yeah. So basically, she was doing the stairs and doing Cassian, and then shit hit the fan. Again, like the idea of the trove items, it's cool, but why weren't they ever mentioned previous to this novel? And like, why are they like not brought up until the end?
Because like the whole like the harp thing was fucking cool, and like the mask, like that's dope.
Yeah.
Like
and
the harp
even the crown too.
Yeah, and the crown was cool too. But like they didn't talk about the crown as much. Yeah. The crown was a last minute addition at the end of the story. We didn't really see it.
Yeah. So just in case any of you have not actually read this book or the synopsis yet, when you're listening to this, the dread trove items are like all cauldron made items, and the crown, like whoever wears it can control people. The mask, whoever wears it can raise the dead, and then the harp, whoever plays it can open any door. And I think that it goes for like metaphorical doors as well. Like if a door is made out of a spell, you know what I mean? Like a ward.
Kind of like what Helion can do with like the
yeah. It just like opens things,
but it also moves across dimensions.
Yeah, it's wild. It also has like something to do with like death. I don't know. There's a lot going on.
I have a lot of theories about this harp.
That tie into the other books.
We'll get to it.
Okay. Yeah. So many of Tabby's theories they're so like baked, man. They're so ready to come out of the oven, but we haven't talked about the other books.
Yeah, if you guys have not read, if you want to get a head start, we're going to do them eventually. But if you have not read Throne of Glass, or most importantly, if you have not read Crescent City, like do it immediately. Start reading Crescent City immediately, because I have so much shit I need to discuss.
Yeah.
Another thing that we don't really like is Elaine. So shocker, Elaine has made it on this list every single book.
Yeah.
On things we don't
Elaine like. And Nesta, usually.
Elaine and Nesta. Yeah, unfortunately we couldn't put Nesta on here because she was the star of the show. You know, but Elaine, precious girl. So she's lying. Yeah. She's full of shit is what she is.
Yeah. She's like, I don't have my powers anymore. Weird.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Why
Where did they
wouldn't
go,
you?
Elaine?
Literally, why wouldn't you?
Because I think she saw some shit. Okay, listen. So we have this whole thing set up, right? With Amryn talking about how Rhysand could be like the king of all, high king, whatever the fuck they called him.
Yeah.
I think that Elaine saw something and she's holding her cards close. Like, I think she has got power on her mind and she's ready to let the claws out. I think she is hiding something. And she has been working with Nuala and Caradwyn. And I don't think they're evil, but I do think they've taught her too much.
Yeah.
And she's a sneaky bastard.
Like, they trust her. And so they're like sharing all of this intel with her.
That, or they're double crossing Asriel in Rhysand. I don't know. I don't know.
My heart,
but I do think she saw something and she's keeping it to herself and making everyone else believe that she doesn't have her powers anymore because it's easier for them to kind of like forget about her like always than for her to like be vocal about it. Because like she even kind of popped off in this book too, and like Nesta was like trying to protect her and she was just like, I was there too, like, why are you guys babying me? But on the same token, like I think she kind of uses that to her advantage.
Yeah, because she was like, I'll do it. I'll do the scrying. And it's like, will you?
You can already see into the future.
Then she's going to claim that like she doesn't like feel her powers anymore at the same time. Like, make it make sense.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And I don't know if it is just, like I said, lazy writing or if we got something else planned for it. And like knowing Sarah J Maas, she's got something else planned for her.
Yeah, it's definitely sus. And like I don't think that she like Sarah wouldn't like
for a reason.
Yeah, she wouldn't just like forget about Elaine. Like Elaine's a major character in the series, so like she's not going to just forget to make it make sense.
Another thing that we don't really like about this book is like Moore's involvement in the story. So she's not really in the book at all, and that is because Rhysand has her doing something across the season. I think building relationships with like Ballahan and Montessor.
Yeah, she was in Sangraval, like trying to make a treaty, but they were like, no, because we don't really know if the Mortal Queens are gonna like start another war. So they were tentative about that.
And so she's not here.
Yeah, and what really bothers me is like the parts that she is in, it's just her being mean to Nesta about like the whole situation with Cassian. And it's like, why do you care? Because she's acting so jealous, but like, hey, do we need to remind you that you're literally like only like stringing Cassian along? Like you're not actually attracted to him. So like, why are you so jealous that he's into Nesta? And like, she doesn't like her. Like that's fair.
We don't either.
But like, just because you don't like her doesn't mean you should be like jealous, like it's weird.
Don't be so like possessive of Cassian and Asriel because like you're doing the same thing. Like
they're just your friends. It's not like you don't have the right to do that. Like it's definitely misplaced.
I will say like the one, I guess, cool thing she did in the book was like helping train the Valkyrie, and like all the priestesses were already very comfortable with her, obviously, because she saved a bunch of them. And I do think it was really sweet that she taught Cassian how to dance. Yeah, I thought that was very kind of her to do. But other than that, like, I don't know. Like, I don't really feel like she needed to be in the book.
I agree. And I think she's just there for like sense of like completeness.
Like, don't forget about Moore.
Yeah, they're like, she's still a part of this family.
Right. Like she got to hold Feyre's child as she lay dying. Like,
yeah.
Really glad she was there for that.
Yeah. She's like, oh, a baby. She's like,
what
Rosalie from Twilight.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. It reminded me of Rosalie from Twilight when Bella has her baby and she's just like, this is my child now.
This is a fucking like parallel right now.
Oh my God, that's
so mother's on her deathbed and then the blonde bitch is just like, oh, the baby.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's literally what that was.
10 out of 10.
Which brings us to Feyre's pregnancy.
We hate it.
Speaking of Mora holding Feyre's child as she lay dying, Feyre's pregnancy was so stupid.
Yeah.
Like, love that they're having a child. I do think it's strange that they made such a big fuss about Fae children being so rare and so blessed and blah blah blah. And Feyre just immediately been like, no problem.
Yep, they're like immediately baby.
Bet I'm gonna have a
Also,
baby.
can we talk about how, well, I guess let's first of all, because you've written here, like she definitely could have saved herself. Like she's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. Like at some point it mentioned something about like, oh, it's so risky for her to like use magic, like Feyre to use magic.
But
But like
you're dying.
that doesn't make sense because like, yeah, first of all, you're dying anyway. So like what's it gonna hurt? Second of all, like Reese is allowed to use magic on you, but it's risky for you to use magic. Like what about it is risky?
Well, and here's my thing is that they're like transforming may harm this pregnancy. It's like, well, she transformed when she conceived the baby. So I don't know if it would do much to harm it, making her cervix bigger.
Yeah.
Giving it more room.
It really doesn't.
The only reason was to give Nesta a redemption arc. That was the only reason why. Otherwise, it does not make sense.
But it's just like lazy. Like they could have done that in a different way. And also something that like ticked me off is like how Reese kind of like kept it from Feyre. Like the danger.
Reese was kind of a dick in this book.
Yeah. He was very much, as Bryce likes to say in the Crescent City series, he was very much an alpha hole. We don't love that for him.
That's not, Reese, that's not you.
Yeah, which, I mean, that does, like, add up because, like, he really wasn't acting like himself. Like, he needed a fucking Snickers because he was so stressed the entire book.
I felt bad for him.
Me too. He was like just sitting in the knowledge that like Feyre and the baby were in danger because Feyre's anatomy couldn't like support the child.
Oh my god, this is Twilight too.
Oh my god, Sarah, we need to talk.
It's actually Edward. Like whenever Bella is like pregnant with the soul-sucking vampire child. Oh my god.
Except
Sarah,
the only difference
original.
is Reese like loved the baby and wanted it to be born. Edward was like, Yeetus the fetus.
Yeah,
bitch.
get it the fuck out of here.
Yeah. So honestly, I kind of respect Edward more because he was like, no, you're not killing my wife today, baby.
I
but
think
Reese was like, I don't know. Maybe we can have both.
But also it's like, hey Reese, why didn't we think about this ahead of like I know you guys weren't using contraceptives or whatever, but if you were that worried about it, like maybe don't fuck her while she's in a different form. Like, I don't know. It seemed common sense to me. And like I get like maybe in the heat of the moment they weren't thinking about that or that like the baby would have wings, but I don't know. Like just stuff was not adding up for me.
It was just like this situation was too specific. Like there were too many details creating this situation and it just ended up making it not work.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Like
it didn't work.
She had to put so many like this is the reason, and then it just became like that's
and it's like if you have to give that many reasons, like it probably wasn't like feasible to begin with.
Yeah, like it's just silly. Like it's really silly.
And like honestly, when Feyre was like dying and stuff, and like and Nesta's having like this heart to heart with whatever higher being, I'm assuming it's the mother. Like I wish like we'd gotten to see more interaction maybe with the mother. Like I feel like that would have been a good time to get some more questions answered. I don't know if she would have answered them all, but like
yeah,
I don't know, like that whole thing seems so again rushed. Like it was the last like 5 pages of the book and she was just like Feyre's dying, oh god, like take all my power, we're not gonna worry about anything else. She's like save this woman because Reese will also die, which we're gonna talk about that too. Just I don't know, dude, it just didn't make sense.
I agree. And yeah, the fact that it was so like such a small percentage of the book when it carried so much of the weight, it's just like
it's
wow,
just like, that's a pretty big deal. Like Feyre's dying and you're just gonna downplay it like that. Like our heroine of the last 3 books is literally passing away. And
another thing that You want to know what grinds my gears? The words that are used and phrases in smut scenes and fantasy novels.
It is fantasy novels specifically that do shit like this. Oh my god.
So specifically the phrase feasted upon.
We used it
another
five
one
too many times.
Oh, way too many times. Another one that we recently saw was like talking about like Cassian's like thing being spent. What did it say? Like spending
his seed.
I don't know. It was something gross.
Like the word seed.
Yeah, the word seed needs to be eliminated.
Almost would rather them just use the word cum.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I would. Also, quit calling it a core. Don't like that.
Her quivering core. Get the fuck out of here. Get out of here. His member.
Yeah, it's gross. Put your thesaurus away. You're freaking me out.
You know what? I know what it is. Just call a spade and like we'll move on.
Yeah, like you're not fooling anybody and you're just making us uncomfortable.
God, I hate that. Just the word choice, Sarah, was so poor. And that's partially what I like about the Crescent City books, is that they're a little more modern.
Yes.
So we're using modern language.
Exactly. Yeah, like we're not like reading Miss Willa Collins' diary here.
Miss Willa. God bless. Last thing that we just really didn't care much for, which I forgot that they had done this until we rehashed it at the end of the book.
At the time, I was just like, okay,
like, that's super cute. Yeah, so if you'll remember in Frost and Starlight, at the very end of the book, Reese and Feyre basically like make this bargain with each other to never leave one another. And that bargain was taken literally because at the end of the book, so Feyre is like dying and Reese is panicking and everyone else is panicking. And they're like, but why are you, like, specifically, why are you panicking? And he's like, oh, not only is my wife going to die, but I'm going to die with her. And they're like, what? And he's like, yeah, so funny story. We promised that if one of us dies, the other one is also going to die. Super romantic, very Romeo and Juliet-ish.
He's like, have you seen The Notebook? Like,
yeah,
it's very much The Notebook.
And they're like, hey, dude, you're a fucking idiot. You are literally the thing keeping this whole kingdom like going right now. Why would you do that? He's like, yeah, I don't know. Hindsight 20/20, right? Like,
he's like, I just love my girl.
What were they thinking? Like, I get being wildly in love, and like if you know one of our husbands were to pass away, like, yeah, it would be rough, but I'm not going to kill myself
you're
too.
Still worth something without your significant other. Like, why would you just?
That's yucky.
Do that. Yeah, very cringe.
I hated that.
That was honestly, that also gives me Twilight vibes because like very angsty Edward when he thought Bella died was just gonna kill himself also. Sorry, spoilers for Twilight if you guys
haven't read Twilight yet.
Twilight. Oh my god, we should do Twilight. Let's do Twilight.
I don't know if I could like physically
we can do it because I recently, whenever Midnight Sun came out like 2 years ago, I read it and it took me back. It sucked me back in. I was like, oh yeah, like this is peak,
dude. I don't get me wrong, don't get it twisted. I loved Twilight when it first came out, but I have also grown a lot since then. So I don't know if I can do it.
Also,
I have developed a certain type of taste for books.
And Twilight to the internet since then. So yeah, that kind of sums up all the things that like grinded our gears.
I have a bone to pick about.
Yeah. So next, kind of moving on, we're going to talk about relationships between some of the characters this novel and how they grew. Starting with Nesta and Cassian.
Nesta and Cassian, like we've covered quite a bit about them at this point in time. They both had a lot of character growth. They both had like separately did amazing things. I loved that for them. And like, you know, Nesta started the Valkyrie and she got everyone like fucking hyped and like got over her fear of fire and like fucking became an Illyrian warrior.
Proud of her. Out of her fear of fire would.
First, she learned how to take a bath. Cassian, found his inner strength and like what he is strong physically, but he is scared inside and like got over that fear and blah, blah, blah. Together, they are a fucking hot mess.
Yeah.
Like together they are a mess. And we already talked about the miscommunication trope. Like, my God, like I've never seen such a like discombobulated couple.
They are enemies to lovers to enemies to lovers to enemies to lovers.
Like, even now that they're mated, I still think they may hate each other. I don't actually know. Like they love each other because of the bond, but God, I don't know. Like I did like her.
Oh, what? Sorry to cut you
go
off.
For it. You're good.
I was just gonna say it's like how like Reese's parents were mated, but he was like they weren't right for each other though.
They
like I think
fought each other.
The mating bond is not necessarily like, oh yeah, these people are going to be perfect together.
And like that's my other thing too, is that like I know where she's going with this. Like I know where Sarah J Maas is going with this, and she's gonna mate off all of the sisters. Like, like they're all mated off now, and like I feel like she didn't need to do that.
Yeah. It definitely like takes away from the fact that they were like, oh, the mating bond is like so rare and
secret and blah, blah. And like I get that they're all made beings and like it's different for them and whatever, but I don't know, dude. Like
that's her excuse for everything though, and it just kind of gets redundant because it's like, oh, they're made so they can track the cauldron. They're made so they can track the trove. They're made so they can all be mated. They're like made so Feyre can conceive a child immediately. Like, okay.
Like they would have been better off as friends.
Yeah.
Like I feel like they hyped each other up and like I really feel like imagine and like Eris and Nesta should have ended up together. I don't know.
Yeah. And imagine like an alternate like version where Cassian and Emery got together.
Well, I think Emery's a lesbian.
Oh, is she?
I'm pretty sure.
So it would have to be a really alternate version.
Well, because like whenever Moore came to train them that one day, she was like, Emery couldn't take her eyes off of her. And I was like, oh, cool. Emery's probably a lesbian. I'm assuming.
Yeah, my bad.
I don't know. Just like
well, then never mind.
Just like I think Gwen and Azriel are going to get together.
Absolutely.
They had that 100% great chemistry.
Yeah.
That's a highly contested thing. We're going to talk about it more in this next mini-sode. And we'll also talk about there's bonus chapters, by the way, for this book, for those of you who weren't aware of it. So we'll talk about those shortly. But I don't know. I think they would have been better as friends. I do like their like kind of dom sub vibe.
Oh yeah, I love
that in general, like for any book.
Am I outing myself right now?
No, like love that shit. That was cool.
Yeah, agreed with everything. So Nesta and Azriel, like Azriel is perfect. You cannot tell me that he is not the best character in this entire series. I love him so much. He's so thoughtful.
He helps train the Valkyrie from the goodness of his heart.
He's so kind and like empathetic, and he knows not to like push. And I mean, Cassian is good too about that, but he's a little more he kind of pushes them until he realizes that like, okay, like they're not like responding well to that. But Azriel like doesn't even ever push. He's just like, absolutely, like we'll do what you need. I love it.
Well, and I think that's why him and like Gwen get along so well, was because like I said, he's the one who like rescued her from the temple and stuff. And so like he understands, well, he's had obviously his own personal trauma. And so he understands like the learning delays and like developing like your strength and what like needing to get out of your mind basically. And he does that with Nesta too. Like he understands like she's in a dark place and like, that's why he shows her so much kindness when no one else does, because I'm sure after they rescued him, he was probably not in a great place either, but he had Reese and Cassian to kind of pull him out of it.
Yeah. And I mean, Nesta kind of like has isolated herself, which makes her situation a lot worse, but like it is important, to like remember and acknowledge that she has PTSD and everything that she is doing is because of that trauma.
Yeah.
She was traumatized previously as a human too, and like her coping mechanism has always been to be like a complete asshole and shut down. But it's like magnified because the trauma when she became a fae was significantly magnified.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's important to remember.
Yeah, just very thankful for Asriel, and I think he is kind of what saved this book. Honestly, he balanced everything out.
Yeah. And just the fact that we get to see more of his personality too, like when he's teasing
Really opens
Cassian. Yeah, and he's like, as your chaperone, like, is there something I need to know about? Like he's always just like messing with them.
You forget how funny Asriel is, and also just how excited both of them were when Reese told him they were having a baby. Like,
no, they're like, we're gonna be uncles.
God, that's cute.
Yeah, they're very, very sweet in their own ways. So next we're going to talk about Nessa and Feyre. What's really kind of a bummer is that we don't get any POV from Feyre in this novel, and
except
like,
in the bonus chapter.
Miss it. Oh yes, in the bonus chapters, we get a couple different perspectives, but not in the actual like released novel. And it's like, wow, it would have been cool to see her perspective on some of these things. Nesta, she is a jerk to Feyre because she just recognizes that Feyre is like better than her. And like, I mean, to an extent, it's like, it's very much like Nesta is limiting herself. Like she could be doing all these things that Feyre's doing. Like she's just as capable, but she just like completely refuses. And Feyre, she just kind of takes it. She's like, oh yeah, that Nesta is just like that. Like she just hates me. And it's like, okay, but like you deserve better than that.
Part of that I do think is because of like the way their mother treated them separately. Like their mom favored Nesta and like kind of did everything for her. And so I don't think Nesta was ever really held accountable for like anything she's ever done, even like after their mom passed away, like when they moved into the cabin and whatever, like even Feyre didn't hold her accountable because like that's just kind of how it always was, which doesn't give her, you know, an excuse, but it does give you some perspective to, I think, for why Nesta acted the way she did, because Feyre has always just been very self-sufficient. Everyone kind of forgot about her. And so it makes sense that she'd be the one to make shit happen because she's always had to.
Yeah. And their mom like kind of pitted them against each other. Yeah, she like there's one time in this novel when Nesta remembers her mom had told her that Elaine would marry for beauty and Nesta would marry for conquest. And it's just like, what does that mean? And like, why would you say it to your child?
Yeah, like poor Elaine in that situation. Like,
yeah,
no one ever thought she would be destined for greatness ever.
Yeah, so like their mother like took all of their strengths and weaknesses and like compared them against each other. It's just like obviously she was a shit mom, but
rest in peace. The next group the next relationship related to kind of focus on is Nesta and Reese. So they have a tumultuous relationship. Like Reese has made it clear even like back in book 2 that he does not much care for Nesta, and like he is upfront with that about to Feyre. Like he's like, don't like her, don't like what she did to you, she's trash. And
Feyre gets defensive too.
Yeah,
you know, like whenever like someone says something about your sibling and you're like, whoa, like only I can say that, like you get really defensive of them. Like Feyre very much had that
only
moment.
I can.
Yeah, only I can tear into my sister. Thank you.
So like obviously like, there's a point in time in this book where Reese is just like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, because she's the one who's upfront with Feyre about like that baby's gonna kill her. And I do respect Nesta for doing that. She went about it the wrong way, but I have nothing but respect for Nesta for being straight up with Feyre and being like, that child is killing you.
Because why would Reese not tell her? That pisses me off. And that's so out of character for him.
Right. And I really do think that stems from just like a deep-rooted fear of losing his family. Not a good reason to not tell her, but I think that's what it is.
It has to be, because he's always been like, everything's your choice, but like then we get to this situation and he's like, nah.
Like, hey Reese, now is not the time to be pro-life, you know? Hey baby. But anyway, so like they do reconcile in the end because he owes Nesta big time for saving his fucking family and himself, because he was gonna die too.
Yeah.
But I mean, their whole relationship, like they are like enabling Nesta the whole time. Like nobody is giving her the help that she needs, and I think Reese is the worst of all, because like he did offer her positions, like he did try to extend an olive branch, but at the same time, like they knew she's being self-destructive. They knew she's drinking herself to death. Like they got the bills, like they paid for it. And like, I don't know. I feel like they just could have done more to help her. And Reese like pretended to do what he could, when in fact, like there was more that they all could have collectively done to help her.
Yeah, because like Reese was only like reaching out to her because of his love for Feyre.
Right.
But it's like they like allowed her to move out or whatever, which I mean, I say allowed because like, yeah, like obviously they're going to not hold her there against her will.
Right.
But they were like, clearly she's not okay. And we're just like, yeah, okay, sure, you're good to move out on your own. But like, she was not well. Like she needed a support system. And they were just like, yeah,
like, even
good luck out there.
Turned her back on her.
I know.
And that's what I think what pissed me off too, is that like Amryn knew like Nesta confided more to Amryn than she did anybody else. And so like Amryn knew where she's coming from. Amryn knew a lot of her trauma, like her relationship with her mom. And like even then Amryn's like, no, you're being selfish. And it's like, come on now. Like
makes me sad too, because like Amryn was so much more patient with Feyre. Like whenever Feyre was too scared to go to the prison, she like showed up and like gave her that amulet and was like, here, like you got this, like go on and you can do it. So it's like, where was that energy when Nesta needed you?
I think it's a respect thing, honestly, because Amryn could like sent the bond between Reese and Feyre, and like Amryn, I'm not gonna lie, she pissed me off in this book, and I'll talk about it here in a little bit when we go over the theories. But like she was tripping this book, like she was recommending some wild ass shit.
First of all, holding out on the information about the trove items until now.
Yeah, like that could have been huge.
Strike one.
Strike one. But yeah, I don't know. She just was not a good friend to her, and nobody was except for Cassian.
Yeah. And it was really hard for him too, because like his feelings were obviously complicated by romantic feelings. But he was trying to also just be that friend that she needed as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, next we're going to talk about the Valkyrie, our favorite Girly-Pops. We love Emery and Gwen. They are so supportive of Nesta. They like really help to bring her out of her shell. And like she does the same for them by, inviting them to come train with her. So great that they don't judge Nesta because like they've gone through their own traumas, and like she really needed that. Like she really needs like these people to hear what she's been through and what feelings she has, and to be like, yeah, I completely understand and we're here for you. That meant a lot to her to have that. And we just feel like they will play a huge role if Prithian ever goes to war again, because they've trained themselves to be like this unstoppable force. They completed the blood rite together.
They've got some bloodthirsty priestesses ready to fucking go.
Absolutely ready to like take their anger out on some evil people.
I also just feel like Sarah J wouldn't have like brought up like the Valkyrie, like they wouldn't have like gone into such extensive detail about them if they weren't going to be used later on. Like I really do feel like basically Nesta is going to step up with Cassian and be a general to the armies as well.
That would be so great too, because they've been trying so hard to train all the female Illyrians.
Exactly.
And so now that they have like the Valkyrie, it's like this example of like, hey, females can be great warriors too. Here's an example. And then they can like, you know, hopefully change the Illyrians' minds.
Yeah.
So
I think it's really cool, like the involvement of the priestesses, and especially Clotho. Like, she is such an underrated character in this book. She's amazing. And just like the fact that she is so willing to like encourage immediately, and like she doesn't want to like hoard the priestesses. Like, she wants them to genuinely heal and to be able to defend themselves. Like, she's not going to push anyone to not do what they want to do, but I do love that she gives them the chance to take their lives into their own hands.
yeah, she was so supportive.
The Valkyrie are cool. The last, kind of relationship we want to look at is Nesta and the House of Wind. So that was just like throughout the whole book, just such a really wholesome thing that they had going on. We're still not 100% sure like what runs the House of Wind. But it is a thing, like I don't know, like
it's definitely implied that it has feelings, because like, so the house is like spelled to take care of whatever need you have. Yeah, but it's like, it's sentient, because Nesta at one point was like, when the house was delivering books to her, she was like, don't tell me you can read. And then it like dropped more books, and it's like implying that the house can like do all of these things.
Well, and like when they went to the library, like if she went all the way to where Bryaxis used to live, like that's like the heart of the house, because if you remember, the library is in the bottom of the House of Wind. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's like its own being, and like it can hear and see everything that happens within the house, within the library. That plays into a different theory I have for a future time, but I do like the relationship that Nesta has with the house. I really feel like the house is kind of what brought her back from the brink of like self-destruction.
I know.
It was kind of like the turning point for her.
Yeah, because I also like wrote here, so since the house it like takes care of all of your needs, it's like maybe it knows that what Nesta needed was a friend.
So sweet.
Crying. It's too
just
cute.
Sobbing over a house that isn't real.
It's like an Encanto.
Yeah.
The casita. The house.
Aww.
I love it. Yeah, beautiful.
All right. So I'm really excited to go over theories for this episode. I have been sweating over these for a little bit, guys. Like, I am freaking stoked. So all this time, basically, since we have gone to the prison for the first time in the second book, they have kind of hinted at there possibly have been being an eighth court. So we don't really know a ton about the eighth court. We don't know if it even existed, but the more we read this book, the more like there's got to be an eighth court. Like, there's got to be.
Oh yeah.
So first of all, we see Helion. He comes in to visit everybody on his little Pegasus. And they go on to say, like, according to legend, the Pegasuses had come from the island that the prison sat on. Perhaps that was part of their decline. Their home had vanished, and whatever had sustained them was no longer there. So first of all, saying like something else was on the prison before it was the prison. And we've said that before. So a big hint that like there could have been an eighth court. Pegasuses were native to that land, and since then like they're steady declining, and somehow Helion got a hold of them. The other part was when we started like hunting for the dread trove. So the harp is hidden in the prison. So the second dread trove item is the harp. And while Cassian and Nesta are in the prison, Nesta says, part of me wonders if the prison was built or stocked with inmates to hide the harp's presence. I wonder if someone hid the harp here knowing that it'd never be noticed, with so much awful magic around it. So Lanthus later on says like he felt the harp's presence, but he wasn't sure what it was. But it's been there for a hot minute. And they even go on to say like the person who had used it before used it for like super nefarious purposes and then put it back. But we don't really get much like about who it was who used the item, which again, leads me to some other theories for a future time. Oh, so during that time where they're like searching through everything, this is right after they're talking about like the heart being hidden there. Nesta asked who built this place, and Cassian said, "Your guess is as good as mine. Someone who existed before the High Lords ruled. Reese once told me that this island might have even been an eighth court." And so Amryn kind of confirmed that as well. Like she'd been there for a hot freaking minute before the High Lords even existed. That there were like a bunch of different territories. However, by the time she had gotten out, the territories had all been separated into what they are now. And so with her being in there for like 10 to 15,000 years, like it could have very much like come and gone by that time. Or it was before. So see, that's where it kind of falls apart, because Amryn went in before the courts existed, and by the time she got out, the courts were separated. But
yeah, like, but you're
maybe
saying
it was like one big court.
Yeah, but even the like 10 to 15,000 years that she was in there, like that is long enough for a civilization to like fall apart. Like I feel like.
But what doesn't make sense is when Nesta picks up the harp, it like basically kind of shows her like a flashback of people being like trapped within the walls. So she said, "Fey were pounding on the stone, begging to be let out. It was a trap and our people were too blind to see it." So whoever owned the harp before, like basically trapped an entire like court's worth of people within the walls of the prison. Yeah,
that's like what Amarantha did to people under the mountain.
And so I don't know, like that's where I get a little confused, because it's like it may have been a court like before the prison was built, but also I don't know.
But I think also we mentioned at one point, and this kind of goes back to you saying like it could have just been one giant court, because we talked about it potentially being a kingdom, because when Striga was singing that song when Feyre was getting the ring, we talked about the king and the queen. So like maybe it was all one big kingdom.
Well, and on top of that, like when they walk into the court, or when they walk into the prison, like where the harp is, Nesta said that it was sitting on top of an 8-pointed star with the harp being in the middle of it. And so a lot of people call the eighth court like the dusk court. In the way that she described the star to be, like there were 4 points bigger than the other 4, and so I think the 4 big points are like the celestial courts, and then the 4 smaller ones are the like seasonal courts. But it could also be like there was one, like the harp represents like the one person who oversaw all the territory. So there was like one king who kind of oversaw everything, which also kind of gets mentioned later on in the book, and we'll cover that here in a minute. But I do want to read from page 636, because Lanthus, let me find it. Lanthus talks about like there being like a hunt and everything, and like basically there's more to the area, like there was more than what just the Fae were before the courts existed. But on page 636, Eris is talking about how every point of like the 3 mountaintops, like every mountain has a prison built underneath. Well, 2 of them at least have prisons built underneath it. So Nesta was asking why are the mountains sacred to you? Why specifically like under the mountain? Why is it sacred to them? And it says Eris shrugged, and Nesta knew Cassian monitored his every breath. "There are 3 of them, you know, sister peaks. This one, the mountain called the prison, and then the one the Illyrian brutes called Ramiel. All bald, barren mountains at odds with those around them." And he said, "We don't know why they exist, but do you not find it strange that 2 out of the 3 have underground palaces carved into them?" So again, kind of playing into the idea that like maybe there were a bunch of different courts before like all of the...
like yes, Lanthus, I do find it strange. Tell me more.
Well, that was Eris.
Eris. Just kidding.
And so yeah, like I think Eris is onto something here, and I think maybe he knows like something's not adding up. But I do think it's super, super strange that we have people trapped in the walls, and Nesta was able to hear them, and like something bad happened under the prison or in the prison. And I really do hope we get some more information on it over the next couple books, or even in some different stories. I don't know.
Too. And so that kind of like leads into so this was actually from A Court of Wings and Ruin, but we mess up. We forgot to talk about this. But the Bone Carver in chapter 23 of Wings and Ruin is telling a story. So I'm going to read about that. So first of all, the Bone Carver is explaining to Feyre and Cassian that there's a reason that he was like hiding in the prison, basically. So he says, "Do you think I let them trap me without good reason?" And then he says, "You have met my sister, my twin, the Weaver, as you now call her. I knew her as Striga. She and our older brother Kostje. How they delighted in this world when we fell into it. How those ancient Fae feared and worshipped them. Had I been braver, I might have bided my time, waited for their power to fade, for that long ago Fae warrior to trick Striga into diminishing her power and becoming confined to the middle. Kostje, too, confined and bound by his little lake on the continent. All before Prithian, before the land was carved up and any High Lord was crowned." And then he continues, "Clever, that Fae warrior. Her bloodline is long gone now, though a trace still runs through some human line." He smiled, perhaps a bit sadly. "No one remembers her name, but I do. She would have been my salvation had I not made my choice long before she walked this earth." And then he says, "She could not kill them in the end. They were too strong. They could only be contained. I knew that long before she ever trapped them, took it upon myself to find my way here, to hide from my siblings." So the fact that he says that this old Fae warrior who can find his death god siblings is potentially still running through a human bloodline leads us to believe that is
Feyre's family.
It's Feyre's family. So that ties into everything that we've been talking about with Feyre's mom, like being connected to the Fae, and like that could explain why her dad even, well, it could be on her dad's side because he was able to somehow strike a bargain with Kostje. And like, how is that possible? What power would he have over Kostje?
Because his family was the one who put him in there in the first place.
Yeah, so like maybe he did have power over this freaking death god, and yeah, it's wild.
Well, it also makes sense why like Feyre and Nesta are like more prone to like the fighting lifestyle because like they do have like blood from this great warrior, which makes me think like, okay, it all kind of comes back to Elaine. It's kind of a half-baked idea, but like I really feel like Elaine like maybe does not have the same of both parents that Feyre and Nesta do, because like Feyre and Nesta both take after their mother, and they always talk about how they both have their mother's eyes and like how like they do share a lot of similarities, whereas Elaine was always her like her father kind of babied her, but like she does not have the same colored hair, she doesn't have the same colored eyes, like she doesn't really look like them. And so like I don't know, like what if Elaine is like different?
Damn.
I mean, that may not be true, but
yeah, I don't know. Like she definitely like, I think her hair color is similar, but yeah, it doesn't ever say that she has her mother's eyes. So I don't know. But like, why would she put an emphasis on the fact that Feyre and Nesta both have their mother's eyes? But Elaine doesn't.
But also, it's like, obviously, I think Nesta would remember their mom being pregnant. Well, maybe, I don't know. Like, I think Elaine is definitely like their mother's child, but like, what if she's like,
could be a different father?
I don't know, like how that would make sense though. But I do think they're all related, or they're all descended from this Fae warrior. For sure. Too. She wouldn't have brought it up otherwise. And like maybe that Fae warrior came from the 8th court.
Yeah.
And that's how. Yeah.
I do think so.
Yeah.
And then, like, also, like, if it is, you know, their bloodline and the Fae warrior did come from this, like, 8th court or, like, kingdom, then that song that Striga was singing could very well be, like, a legit, like, story. Like, you know, like a fairy tale song.
Oh, my
like,
God.
She's telling the story of Feyre's ancestors.
Yeah. Yeah. And
then those are the people that trapped her. So she would have reason to be singing about them. She'd be like singing about them and also like, fuck you.
in this book, I don't know. I feel like in this book, she just like gives us so much to work with because like when Nesta and Cassian are in the prison, like fighting Lanthus, he talks about like the wild hunt and like him being a member, like basically how like the wild hunt existed before like any of the high lords and like how they kind of ran the land. And so when they get back, Reese and Cassian and Nesta are like all talking, and Feyre are all talking, and they're like, "What is the wild hunt?" And Reese is basically just like, it's a myth. And they're like, "But what is it?" And so I'm going to read this whole passage to you guys. Hold tight. It says, Reese lifted a hand, and a book of legends from a shelf behind him floated to his fingers. He laid it upon the desk. He flipped it open to a page, revealing an image of a group of tall, strange-looking beings with crowns atop their heads. The Fae were not the first masters of this world. According to our oldest legends, now most forgotten, we were created by beings who were near gods and monsters, the Daglin. They ruled for millennia and enslaved us and the humans. They were petty and cruel and drank the magic of the land like wine. Guys, that's a lot for later. Reese's eyes flicks to Ataraxia, then to Cassian. Some strains of the mythology claim that one of the Fae heroes who rose up to overthrow them was Fionn, who was given the great sword Gwydion by the high priestess Oleana, who had dipped it in the cauldron itself. Fionn and Gwydion overthrew the Daglin. A millennium of peace followed, and the lands were divided into rough territories that were precursors to the courts. But at the end of those 1,000 years, they were at each other's throats and on the brink of war. Fionn unified them and set himself above them as High King, the first and only High King of this land that we've ever had. So that could potentially be the Eighth Court that he oversaw was Gwydion, was Fionn and Gwydion together. And so they're like, what happened to the High King? And it says Reese ran a hand over the page of the book. Fionn was betrayed by his queen, who had been the leader of her own territory, and by his dearest friend, who was his general. They killed him, taking on some of his bloodline's most powerful and precious weapons. And then out of the chaos that followed, the 7 High Lords rose, and the courts have been in play ever since. So it would make sense. What if... Okay, so that makes sense. So, like, what if his queen and the general stole the harp, trapped everybody inside the prison, and then left the harp there to help start, like, the 7 courts?
Yeah, because...
That makes sense?
It makes sense, too, that they would, like, trap the people because the people would be, like, angered that they, like, betrayed the king and killed him. So they, like, trapped them to avoid, like, an uprising.
Well, and then so at that point, Feyre's like, you still haven't told us what the wild hunt is. And it's like, oh, but you gave us so much more, Reese. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You answered so many questions. And so Reese turned the pages in the book to an illustration of a host of riders on horses and all manners of beasts. The Daglin delighted in terrorizing the Fae and humans under their control. The wild hunt was a way to keep us all in line. They'd gather a host of their fiercest, most merciless warriors and grant them free rein to kill as they pleased. The Daglin possessed mighty monstrous beasts, hounds they called them, though they didn't look like the hounds we know, that they used to run prey to the ground before they tortured and killed them. It's a terrible history, and much of it has been elaborated in myths. And the hounds actually look like the beasts that are like carved into the night or the Court of Nightmares. And so I do think that like eventually like whatever part of the wild hunt that kind of split off after like the creation of the courts, like a lot of them went to the Court of Nightmares, and that's why they're so wicked.
Yeah.
So I don't know, there's like a lot going on there, and like she set up a lot of new information that we'll hopefully cover a little bit more, because again, why would we bring up the wild hunt if it wasn't going to be important? Same thing for like the Eighth Court. Like obviously we are setting up for an Eighth Court, like there's going to be an Eighth Court, but some of this also plays a role in some of her other books too. So
yeah, and I am so excited to eventually get to discuss that.
We'll get to it eventually, but it's all coming together.
It is. So the next thing we're going to kind of theorize here is, okay, so the fact that Nesta at the end of the book changed Feyre and her own body to be able to potentially bear children with wings, but she didn't change Elaine's body. So thank goodness We think that implies
Right.
that Elaine will not end up with Azriel, which is a weight off of my shoulders.
Which a lot of people think they will, and shame on you.
Shame on you. First of all, you're wrong. Azriel and Gwen belong together.
Gwynreal for life.
Gwenreal for life. Don't add us. We're right on this one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
But I also think that, like I said, Elaine is going to end up with Tamlin. So
yeah, and honestly, they deserve each other.
They deserve it, and that'd be really cute.
Watch like Elaine end up with Tamlin, and like she just makes all of the decisions and just completely controls him.
Probably would, dude. I feel like Tamlin's a fucking simp. Like,
yeah, I mean he is, but at the same time he also was an alpha hole. So
I know, but like maybe he's just waiting for the right girl to like
yeah.
Be a little, like, a little more dom. What if Elaine's actually like just a super dominant presence and like
oh, she's a dominatrix.
Dominatrix.
Oh my God. Help. I haven't even had any alcohol.
I don't know. There's so many things that could go wrong with this. I'm scared. I feel like the next book's gonna be about Elaine.
Gag me with a spoon. Gross.
Oh, okay. So, like I was saying, Amryn like pissed me off in this book, and like I get where she's coming from, but I also think she just maybe went about this incorrectly. So obviously there's a lot of discord between the courts right now, and after Nesta came back with like ataraxia, they also talked about Narbin, and then she made a couple swords on accident with her power. She like instilled power into them and like basically made like a new trove item, and they're like, oh, oops. That's dope. So anyway, like they have these stuff, and like they're talking about how like they're going to need to like really put their foot down with the other courts and like start making plans for like getting everything back together. And Amryn was basically like, Reese, why don't you just become like the king of all territories? And he was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, we have all three of these blades, like you could make yourself a high king. And he was like, no, I don't want to do that. And she was like, why not? And he's like, well, I'm perfectly, happy with my mate and with the way things are. He's like, all I want to do is just get the territory strong again so that we can fight like any outside influence. And she's like, well, what if it's coming from the inside? Which is a good point. But basically she was like, why are you shying away from the power that is your birthright? And so like Amryn is like super heavy pushing for Reese to take over like everything. And so like,
yeah, and like why is this his birthright?
Yeah, like we know his power is different. Like his power is different than
he's built different.
Anything, than like anything anyone else has ever seen. And so like first of all, we don't really know anything about Rhysand's family except for the fact his mom and his sister were brutally murdered. Yeah, but like everyone said his dad was a dick. Yeah, a piece of work. And like other than that, we don't know anything about Rhysand's family. And like Amryn really wants everyone to be involved with this too, because she was like, yeah, Nesta can like take down all of your competition, and Cassian can lead your armies, and Feyre is like the most powerful female and all of blah blah blah. And it's just like, Amryn, baby, like have you been planning this for a while? Like
she's in it for the long game.
Yeah, she is in it for the long haul. And so I think that was weird too, that we just all of a sudden started mentioning this, and it's like, oh well, we literally just talked about the Wild Hunt and like this all powerful king that they had and blah blah blah. But like I also think it's weird too that they mentioned that king was taken down by his general and his queen. And so it's like, well, we don't want that to happen again. So
yeah. And it's like, Amryn, like, is that your plan? Like you want him to become high king?
On top of that, it's like, Amryn, like you're not even from here. We don't know anything about you. And it's like, what? I don't know.
A little bit of xenophobia running through the night court right now.
I'm just very like curious as to what her plan is. Like what's the end goal here?
Yeah, it definitely is like a little sus, like how hard she was pushing for it, but also it could just be because like Reese is the only person she trusts to do it. Like, so
to be fair,
it could be, innocent. But it is a little bit sus that she's like,
I don't know if it's innocent, but
do it.
I don't know. There's just so many different strings of play in this book. And like I said, unfortunately, she introduced so much, but like we didn't really get a whole lot of explanation from it. same thing with like the way it ended, like Koschei escaped, but the queens are dead now, but like Koschei's on the run. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. There's a lot in play, and I'm excited to see where she goes with it. Unfortunately, instead of her coming out with the next ACOTAR book, she's actually going to be working on the third Crescent City book instead. Which there's only going to be three. It's a trilogy, so there are still ACOTAR books coming out. Never fear. But we may be waiting a little bit before we hear from our favorite friends again.
Yeah. And hopefully the podcast is still going on by then.
It'll still be going by then. Don't worry.
Yeah, you guys can't get rid of us that easily. We'll be here for the rest of our lives.
But next week we are going to be taking a little break from fantasy. It has been a wild ride. Fantasy is so fun. We love the world building aspect. We love everything that Sarah J Maas has to offer us, but it's been 10 weeks and we're ready to do something a little different. So we're going to be reading Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey, one of my favorite romance authors.
Actually, that'll be the week after next, because next week
we're doing a mini-sode. Just kidding.
But our mini-sode will be about like our own like shipping Gwynreal, and like we're gonna read some more fanfics specifically about Gwynreal, and we're gonna talk about how much we hate Elaine. So yeah, that'll be kind of how we wrap up this series. And then Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. If you guys are into rom-coms, like this is the book for you.
It is holiday themed, so enjoy a little Christmas in April with us. But
it'll be our second Christmas together.
Yes, we're really into Christmas.
Oh,
if you do want to get prepared for the mini-sode next week, I definitely encourage you to read the bonus chapters for A Court of Silver Flames. If you just Google A Court of Silver Flames bonus chapters, there is something that'll pop up like first thing, and it's on Tumblr. So it's by Illyrian Shadow Hunter on
cool name.
Tumblr, because I guess some people still use Tumblr.
Well, yeah.
It's been a hot minute for me, but
we appreciate your service.
Yeah, thank you so much. But yeah, you can find them pretty much anywhere. But those play a huge role in like what we'll be talking about in the mini-sode, so check it out.
And as always,
let's get lit.